It's been quite a while since a lot of those CoX changes, hasn't it? Rooms such as Ice Demon have improved drastically now that you don't have to wait on planks to begin chopping. So, without further ado, let's get into the updated guide, shall we? So, let's start off by going into the chopper's perspective. So this applies to everyone who isn't prep after Crab Room is completed. Ideally, you exit right as the crystal despawns. However, a common reason why people tend to be late is due to greeting for the enhance. If it means you won't be late, unless you have absolutely no restory, then you should be fine to skip out on sipping the enhance. Other than that, run over to the tinderbox and drop 2 potions nearby. Make sure to not hit any of the scavenger beasts, as this control the prepper. If you have an overload, do not drop the overload and instead drop it by the chest. Once you drop your 2 potions, grab a tinderbox, an axe, then run over to the chest. Proceed to equip the axe and drop the tinderbox as you're getting closer to the chest. That way, you can hit the deposit all button and begin the chop as soon as possible. If it makes it easier for you, you can utilize the screen markers plugin so that after you hit the chest, you can hover over said screen marker, hit the deposit all button, then get off the chest and start chopping. Adjusting your camera angle or even playing unresizable can also make it slightly easier to instantly click the tree once you deposit all. This can take a couple of runs to get down the muscle memory though. Alright, so now we can actually get into the chopping bit. So a quick note, at level 96 woodcutting, you'll be getting the maximum kindling out of chopping the trees, which is a range of 1 to 8 kindling per chop. So get some levels if you're not 96 already. Once you're off the chest, the objective is to gather 20 plus kindling. The reason being, the more kindling you add to the brazier, the faster ice will thaw out. If you notice in this clip, 27 is dumped on the right and 10 is dumped on the left. The HP goes down much faster in the right clip. So try to dump 20 or more kindling into a brazier unless you find yourself as the last person lighting due to bad chops. In that case, try to get at least 18 kindling and then dump. So when you begin chopping any of the trees with an axe, you get put in a 5-tick cycle. You can do actions in between chops like eating sweets or picking up items while still acquiring kindling at the normal rate. All that matters is to make sure you click the tree before said chop tick. Otherwise, you'll get no kindling and be put back at the start of the chop cycle. So to make it easy, wait for the XP drop, as this gives you the most time before your next chop tick. And then you can grab your tinderbox after said XP drop. You can also start moving to another nearby tree after the first chop, which has less people, as this will decrease the odds of trees dying, which can interrupt people's chopping cycles and put them really behind for lighting. Now, at some point, unequip your axe in preparation for depositing it. It can be done while chopping or even when you're heading over towards the brazier to light, as it won't interrupt either of those actions. Now, for the sake of consistency, tell your team ahead of time which brazier you plan to light in your first raid of a session. From that point forward, light the same brazier every raid. This just makes it less likely for people to light the same one, which can be quite detrimental. Now, I've wrapped up talking about chopping and lighting procedure. What happens next? Well, you'll want to follow a 4-step procedure. Step number 1. Drop your tinderbox, withdraw all your gear, then deposit your unnecessary items such as your axe, your blowpipe, your salve, pickaxe, or BGS. Having the extra space is important for grabbing seeds at Shaman's, the seed dibber for planting, or to grab potions from Vanguards. Step number 2. Everyone other than one of the choppers should pick up the overload by the chest, sip it, then drop it, unless it becomes a 1 dose. If you sip it and it's now a 1 dose, then you can bank it in your private storage whenever you get a chance to do so. Step number 3. Run back to the tinderbox where your potions are. Grab your potions and a lockpick if there's one there. Another thing to note is there should be people dedicated to accomplishing a few tasks. Task A. One person grabs an extra axe for the prepper. You'll either drop it or put it in the public chest based on the prepper's preferences and or circumstances. Task B. Another person should be grabbing the planks dropped by the prepper and you should build the chest. You still need a public chest for prep after all. Task C. but one person who didn't sip the overload at the ice chest should grab the one by the tinderbox and sip that. Afterwards, they should bank it once they return to the chest. The reason for not having everyone chug from one overload is since it'll leave you with a 1 dose and a 2 dose overload. That means you'll never need to drop overloads for Vespula later in the raid. This is since you are guaranteed to get an overload drop from Vanguards and one gets made from the Gulper Potions Vanguards drop. That's 4 different overloads. Now, the last task is Task D, which is optional. If there's a Revite on the ground, you can ferry it over for the Prepper. Though sometimes the Prepper will usually ferry it instead, or in some instances the Revite may belong to another player on the team. Now, the last step, step number 4, is just running back to the chest, banking a lockpick, then prepare to spec Ice Demon. Alright, now let's get into the Prepper's perspective. So normally as prep, I'll sip my overload when the team grabs an axe, but you can sip it a bit earlier if you're expecting ice, shamans, and vanguards to finish before your overload expires. Afterwards, I'll drop my potions and lockpicks. I always leave the overload for someone else to grab, and sometimes a revite. As prep, you have a couple of things to accomplish. Dropping planks for the team to grab and build for your prepping needs, getting whatever secondaries you need, and trying to get 4 lockpicks. Bringing in lockpicks can help speed up this process. I usually bring in 2 for my runs, for example. However, if you don't get all the lockpicks by the time your team is coming back to grab potions, then that's okay. You shouldn't be late to ice in hopes of getting more lockpicks and should instead move on ahead and prepare for Ice Demon, just as long as you've got the planks done and secondaries completed. But what if you're not done with either planks or seconds and ice is about to come out? What now? Well, it depends on your space limitations in your setup. If you're able to carry all your secondaries and the planks without sacrificing anything, then you should be fine. However, option number 1 is having your team ferry your secondaries over from the tinderbox and have them drop it by the private only chest. This would only be plausible if you are done with secondaries before planks. The second option would be to make 2 trips. One trip to build the chest and another to grab whatever you left behind. Normally you'll get planks done in time, but there have been a few instances where I've gone dry on even planks. However, this is an option I would suggest avoiding if possible. I would instead advise using the setup that in the scenario you do end up getting unlucky, it lets you carry your planks, secondaries, and your personal potions in one go instead of 2 trips. In the scenarios where I get super unlucky, I normally leave my Revite on the ground for my teammates to ferry over, and then I just grab it at either Ice Demon or Shamans. If you manage to get everything done on time, run over to the chest and proceed to bank your unneeded items, which in your case would be your secondaries, water runes, salve, pickaxe, blowpipe, and an axe if you end up grabbing one off the ground. Alright, now let's talk about the Ice Demon encounter, shall we? For specking Ice Demon, you want to use a hammer. Do not use BGS. Stack right next to him on the chest side and hammer spec. At the start, if you are Venge, you can stay next to him until the Venge procs, then run away and begin surging or T-bowing. You can also revenge yourself as well and take more hits on prayer, but if you are low on brew or your HP is very low, then you can choose to not proc Venges. Just remember that ice can hit 35s through your prayer. Lastly, when Ice Demon's HP dips to about 25%, pull up next to it while attacking. This will in turn reduce the amount of time it takes for your projectile to travel to it. For Twisted Bow, you can be 1 tile off, but for Fire Surge, you need to be adjacent to Ice Demon, or it'll be a tick late getting to him. So the following notes will be some tips for prep if they arrive late, regarding whether or not it's worth speccing. If it's 30% or more HP on arrival and no hammers have been hit yet, then you can send one. If it's 65% or more HP on your arrival and 1 hammer has been hit, then you can again send one. If 2 hammers have been hit though, or the HP is too low, you can hold your spec to use at Vanguards instead. This is just since sending a hammer when the HP is too low or 2+ hammers have been hit won't really make too much of a time difference, and it's better for you to bow at that point. Other than that, being late while Ice is alive can be somewhat irritating, as you still need to bank some things, and he might be throwing boulders at you. Try to do bow shots in between banking items, and try to sit far away from the chest to have him throw boulders in spots away from the chest. And that's basically it. One final note to make is that once Ice Demon is dead, pull away and head to the exit. Having people off tick for Shaman entry might mean they'll get cummed on, hence it's important for everyone to head over to the exit on time. However, make sure to not run early to the exit while he is still alive, as this will chance Ice throwing out a final fuck you boulder that will either kill or lower your team's HP.
Okay.
It really is.
Alright, so let's go over some additional notes. Try not to utilize the safe spots too much, especially when the prep or someone else is late, since this means there's less people for Ice Demon to target. So if, let's say, the prepper is trying to bank while the kill is happening, they'll find it much harder to do so with boulders getting hurled at them at a higher rate. Now, I always see people having trouble with retaining their Fire Surge autocast. So here's two solutions for that. Number one is making sure to always have your tome come on first, but to make it a no-brainer for me, I just like putting the trident on first, then the harm. Secondly, after the room ends, equip your bow. It unequips both your harm and tome at the same time, but you'll still retain your autocast. Now, for those of you guys who want to save money, live better Walmart, if you're running a double stamina setup, sip your stamina as you run through scavengers. Then, drop the sip stamina alongside another potion. That way, you can bank your full stam into your private for an extra space. But 3-dose stamina should be used up until Vanguards, where at the end of Vanguards, you would sip it and get rid of it. This is since a 4-dose stamina should last from Vespula to Home pretty easily. Now, as long as you don't have too many of the same potions as potions stack in your private, you can put items at the top right of your inventory, usually if you want to keep it on you when you deposit your items. Most notably sweets, since it lets you get an extra sweet chomps in comparison to having to pick them up after a chop. Another neat trick for you sweet chompers is you can double sweet every other chop. For example, after your first chop you can double sweet, then on the following chop single sweet, and repeat. Double, single, double, single. The same concept can be applied at Mud Adultery, but instead of double sweeting, you double brew instead. Doing it like this means you'll be able to get your HP up without needing to chug your brews. Saving your brews for the upcoming Vanguard room is good, since for one, drinking brew doesn't cause you to lose ticks, and they can heal you faster than sweets could. So for spellbook swap Thrall users, Ice Demon is the best time to take out your blood runes for later. Once you've banked all your unnecessary items, uncharge your Sing Staff, then quickly recharge it with a few thousand blood runes. For Mage Cape Thrall users, you can take out your Wrath runes from the pouch after ice is done, put in bloods in your pouch, then refill your Sing with whatever's left. Lastly, I decided to not make this the default, but you can do Ice Demon lighting a bit differently. Instead of being assigned braziers, you are assigned a side. North and South. Whoever ends up being the first person to 20 plus kindling lights close, and the other person would light the far brazier. In the scenario of 2 people being done on the same tick, one person should be given priority always and will light close anyway. There are other ways of doing it too, but either way, these make a small difference in time. Now, this is a side note, but it'll make your scav killing spirits nicer. If you have 2 scavs near the tinderbox, kill them around the marked tile, as this will in turn continue spawning them close, assuming you kill them while no one is running over from crabs. However, if only one or none of them are nearby, you'll need to long range kill some of the scavs somewhere near the marked tile to force them to spawn closer. You can also stand next to scavs and make sure not to drag them, so that your trident reaches faster, and the scav also doesn't take a tick longer to die from dragging. You can even summon a Thrall to try to kill scavs with overkill, making the scav die faster, and allowing you to pick up whatever you need faster as well. And that is it for the guide. Please let me know if anything needs clarification in the comments, as this is my second time making a guide such as this. Even then, this is just a rehashed guide anyway. As for the next CM5's guide, we'll delve into how to do Vanguards. Until then, I'll see you guys later.